For the last 2 weeks, I've been playing with DJI's new Action 2, which is a completely reimagined action camera. And I imagine every other reviewer out there is going to be comparing this camera to the new GoPro 10. But the truth is, why does anyone need an action camera when all of us have waterproof, wide-angle video cameras in our pockets all the time? And so in this video, I'm going to be comparing this little guy to its true competitor, the iPhone 13 Pro. Before we get to the test, let me try to explain what this is and how it works. This is a very modular system, and this is the smallest component of the system. This is the camera module. It's got the camera on the front, a touchscreen on the back, one button on the top, and then these little connectors on the bottom, but there's no ports on this at all. It does have internal memory, so you can use this as it is, but you can't add any memory to it, and there's also nowhere to plug in any cable to get the footage off of this thing. To get the full experience, you need this module, which is the front-facing touchscreen module, and it connects with magnets right to the bottom of this. It also has these little snaps that come in on the sides and hold it securely. And when this is attached, it has a front-facing screen so you can see yourself if you're recording yourself. It also has a much larger internal battery, which extends the battery life of your recording. It also has a micro SD card slot, and this is how you add that additional memory. And of course, it has a USB-C jack as well, and this is the only way that you can get the footage off of this camera or charge this camera. So you're probably thinking, no problem, I'll just leave these attached all the time, use it as one camera unit, but you can't because the top camera unit is waterproof and this unit is not. If you want to use this entire system in the water, you're going to have to put it in a waterproof case that I'll talk about in just one second. But as you can see, this is getting a little bit more complicated than your average GoPro. As you know, the iPhone has 3 main cameras with an impressive optical zoom range. The Action 2 has a single ultra wide angle lens and the ability to zoom digitally. Now, the standard field of view on the Action 2 has a very similar field of view to the iPhone's ultra wide angle camera. And so for the rest of this video, I'm only going to be shooting on the ultra wide angle camera on the iPhone, and I'm going to be shooting exclusively in the standard mode on the Action 2. For the first test, I turned off the rock steady stabilization on the Action 2 and walked holding both cameras. As you can see, the iPhone looks much better here, but when I turn rock steady on, the stabilization in both of these cameras looks very similar. Next up, let's test the microphones. All right, this is an audio test on the iPhone 13 Pro. So this is an audio test. DJI claims that this camera has 4 different microphones, and the iPhone has done pretty well over the years when it comes to audio recording. Great professional sounding audio, even in windy environments, although it's not windy right now. Now, the iPhone 13 Pro has an absolutely incredible microphone on it. It sounds really good, but the Action 2 probably has the best microphone I've ever heard in any camera ever. I was really impressed. Here's what the audio sounds like when I'm recording behind the phone. So it should sound a little bit more muffled right now. This is the audio quality when I'm recording behind the camera. How does it sound? But what wasn't very impressive to me was the image quality. I just feel like the footage out of the iPhone here looks significantly better. And if you zoom in, look how much sharper it is out of my phone as well. Moving on to higher frame rates, these 2 shots were filmed in 4K 60 frames per second and slowed down. When we zoom in, you can see a slightly cleaner image coming out of the Action 2. At 120 frames per second, the iPhone has to drop down to 1080p, whereas the Action 2 can still shoot in 4K. And here, the Action 2 is the clear winner. Next up, I wanted to take this little camera out into the ocean, and it is a waterproof camera on its own, and I could shoot with this camera without the underwater housing. But the only mounting options that you have for this are these included magnetic clips that snap onto the bottom, and when they do, it has these little arms that grab the sides. And although this is very secure here on land, I do not trust these clips in water, especially for the sports that I do, surfing, kiteboarding. In this video, I'm on an electric e-foil. I'm taking some pretty hard hits, and if any water hits one of these little notches, this whole thing can come apart. So I personally do not trust this for really extreme sports. And so your only secure option, in my opinion, is the underwater case. One thing that I was excited to see with this underwater housing is that they're using the same mounting system as GoPros. So if you already have a bunch of GoPro accessories, it should still work with this camera system. DJI also sent me this floating handle that you can attach to the waterproof case, and I was very afraid that I was going to drop this thing. These cameras are incredibly heavy, so they would sink immediately, so having this out in the ocean definitely made me feel better. Now, remember the incredible microphones that this has? All right, how does the audio sound while in the case? One other issue that I had with the housing was after a few falls, I noticed a little bit of condensation building up inside. And then something worse happened. The camera just shut off and said it was overheating, which is really weird because I'm in cold water. Let's take a look here. So I'm seeing a little fogging in the case, maybe just the littlest bit of water, but certainly not much. Still strange that it's leaking the first time I used it. What I'm gonna do now is I am going to remove this bottom half, the little selfie screen, because I believe the top part is supposed to be waterproof. All right, let's see if this thing's waterproof. Whoa! What does the microphone sound like when it gets wet? A lot of times these little microphones get clogged with water. Does it still sound good or does it sound muffled? Let's do a little test where I'm gonna get my phone and the DJI wet, and let's see which one sounds better. And check, check, check. How does the audio sound? And check, check, check. How does the audio sound? I love the size of this thing. It's so incredibly small, but because it's so small, it's very difficult to hold. I feel like I'm about to drop this thing any minute. Don't kill me. Next up, I put my phone in a makeshift selfie stick and the Action 2 on the DJI Action tripod to do some skateboarding. This is horrifying. I feel like my phone's gonna fly off and I'm gonna destroy my brand new 13 Pro. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Looking at this footage side by side, I think the iPhone is the clear winner again. The iPhone seems to be exposing for my face while also retaining more dynamic range, while the Action 2 has no problem overexposing parts of the scene, and it's far less sharp. Back in the studio, I tested the ISO performance of both cameras by lowering the light in one-stop increments. The iPhone was once again the clear winner. Now, the Action 2 does have one big feature that the iPhone doesn't, and if you drop down from 4K to 2.7K, it unlocks the ability to turn on horizon steady. And what it will do is keep your horizon perfectly flat no matter the orientation of the camera. So you can be turning this camera all over the place and everything will be perfectly flat. That's only going to be useful if you're shooting something really crazy. Maybe if you're mountain biking and you're really leaning from side to side and you want that perfectly flat footage, that would be cool. But other than that, and shooting in 4K 120, the iPhone wins in almost every other category. I really appreciate how different this camera is. Instead of just copying GoPro, DJI has made something truly unique. The problem is many of these ideas sound great on paper, but they don't work as well in the real world. For example, I love the idea of this magnetic mount that comes in the box with this camera. You can put it in your shirt and then attach this little magnet, and then the camera just snaps onto the magnet. I love that. That's super cool. But when I really started to think how I want to use this, I want to use this in the ocean, but there's no way I trust this. I mean, I could just pull this off easily. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe you can't use it in the ocean, but you could use it snowboarding. But then I thought, well, there's no way I would trust this snowboarding. I mean, if I just bump this, it's going to fall off. So then I thought, okay, well, I'm probably never going to use it. And then this main magnetic mounting system. I've already mentioned to you guys that I don't think this would be totally secure in a really hardcore environment, but I set this little camera down in the dirt today, and apparently there was metal shavings in the dirt because when I picked it up, there was metal all over the bottom. Thought no problem, I brushed it off. But what happened was metal went into these little grooves here that these clips need to attach to, and now it doesn't attach right. And I've tried to get things in there and like clean the metal out, but they're really strong magnets, and I can't get these metal shavings out of the camera. And so again, the magnets are supposed to be super convenient, but now the system just doesn't really work right. Can you hear them grinding in this? When DJI reached out to me and said they wanted to send me some secret unreleased camera, I was really excited. And when I opened the box, I was even more excited. I love the look of this little camera. I love how small it is. And if the image quality was better out of this thing, I think I could overlook some of the complexities of the system. But when I compare this to my phone and I realize that what I'm already carrying in my pocket is waterproof and it takes better video and way better photos, I'm not sure why I would invest in a completely new system.